Good afternoon. I'm meteorologist Don Paul here on my YouTube channel, Don Paul Blathers, and I'm blathering about weather, which seems appropriate. We already have some garden variety showers crossing parts of western New York during the early and mid afternoon. Some more to come, maybe a few rumbles of thunder with this in spots. This is not a severe weather threat, but we do have, and I'll get to it in a moment, a potential severe weather threat for parts of western New York up here. An area of low pressure, which is still to our west. And let's switch to that sector so we can focus on the storm system that is just now developing and in the upper Great Lakes heading toward Ontario. This low will be swinging warm and more humid air around its southern side, while the cool and clammy conditions will be to the north of the low pressure. See the counterclockwise circulation. So that's the system we'll be watching for tomorrow. And it's going to be just potent enough so that the Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma, has put all of western New York and nearby Pennsylvania at slight risk, where you see the yellow for severe, that's a 15% risk, severe thunderstorms with damaging winds and possible large hail. Now, I think this yellow contour is perfectly appropriate for northwest Pennsylvania and for northeast Ohio, but they don't always have time down in Norman, Oklahoma to draw the little notches in the local climatology, because the winds on the Niagara frontier will be shifting to a more west-southwest direction, and the lake temperature is 49 degrees, while the air temperature over land will be much warmer. That cooling off the lake, as is so often the case in mid and late spring and early summer, will tend to buffer our neck of the woods here on the Niagara frontier, not for those of you watching this well to the southeast of Buffalo, from the worst effects of a system. And here's a high-resolution model, and I'm going to try to show you in this model. Let me zoom it in and see if I can zoom it in a little more so you can see the wind vanes, the wind barbs, I should say, that show the wind direction. And here's a depiction of about 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. And at that time, we're seeing some locally intense convection, some strong thunderstorms back here to our west. But the wind direction, rather than coming off land for Buffalo and the Niagara frontier, is coming off Lake Erie for the most part. Again, Lake Erie's 49. So we go from about 8 o'clock with intense convection, then we move ahead an hour, and notice there's a little bit less of the dark reds and bright reds. They're still there, but then we move ahead an hour later and notice a diminishing trend in the intensity of these cells. Lake Erie's wind will be doing its thing, and that is so often the case, as if the convection is based from the surface on up, that Lake Erie breeze can really take the oomph out of it. Now, come midday, we might see a period of strong thunderstorms to the northeast of Buffalo for a short time in parts of Genesee and Orleans counties. But then the focal point with the Lake Erie wind, there's that wind barb. See the orientation right off the water. And that keeps the metro area not totally rain-free necessarily, but it keeps the oomph out of our convection. But later in the day, a focal point develops along the southern edge of that Lake Erie breeze ahead of a cold front, and that's where severe weather is more likely to develop. This is 3 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe down around Howland, Chaffee, parts of Wyoming County. A further intensification in the next hour and better organization well south and southeast of the Niagara frontier, with very little going on the Niagara frontier. The lake wind doing its thing, and this particular wind barb showing a strong westerly wind just a few thousand feet up, and that doesn't hurt the thunderstorms well away from Lake Erie, but it sure does them in near Buffalo and the nearby densely populated suburbs, Niagara and Orleans counties. So this is where I expect the focal point for the severe weather threat later tomorrow. Damaging straight line winds and large hail, the possibility should storms actually become severe. It's a 15% risk, so it's not a sure thing that they're going to become severe, but 15% is more significant than it might sound. As I often draw the analogy, if someone told you you had a 15% chance of winning Powerball if you bought a ticket, you'd say, whoa, those are pretty good odds. Well, 15% in meteorology is not a minor or inconsequential risk. So that's the basic picture. Now, one final note, as for the upcoming holiday weekend forecast. I have a detailed forecast in the weather section of the Buffalo News online right now, day by day, including a brief discussion of tomorrow, but more concentrated on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Memorial Day, day by day. What kinds of temperatures, what precipitation chances there are, excuse me, how many chinks there are in our weather armor. And that again is on the Buffalo News right now. I will talk to you soon.